Hey, this is Matt Schulteis, and this is my week 2 assignment for sports broadcast analysis. The event that I chose to cover today was the Oklahoma City Thunder game versus the Indiana Pacers. It was aired on Sunday, April 13th, and some of the storylines that I saw going into it was just about how Oklahoma City right now they're in the number 2 seed in the West, and that Indiana is tied with Miami for the number 1 seed in the East. And the Pacers control their own destiny. If they win the rest of their games, they secure the number 1 seed, and then the Miami Heat would get the number 2 seed for the playoffs. They talked about how the Pacers had really been struggling, actually 14 wins and 14 losses in their last 28 games. Um, so they did pretty well early on, but less now. They're only about a 500 team. And Roy Hibbert, their all-star center, had really contributed to that because he's had a lot of struggles lately with his game. Um, the announcers during the game, they were able to connect with the audience. And one of the announcers, Jeff Van Gundy, just talked about how the Pacers are more offensively challenged than other championship teams, and they really have to rely on their defense. They really have to rely on that, and because it's so dominant, they have to hang their hat on that. There was also some talk about Steven Adams, who's a rookie for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's actually from New Zealand and was described by his coach Scott Brooks as a fearless player. Basically, it's unique because they talked about how he's the first ever player drafted in the first round that's originally from New Zealand. So it was actually interesting to find that out. During the game, there were some storylines that developed. They talked about at the beginning of the game, there was a lot of talk about Pacers point guard George Hill. Now, some people say that he's a perfect fit for this team to win a championship. Other people were saying that the Pacers cannot absolutely not win a championship with George Hill as their point guard. Um, so there was some there going back and forth. They talked about how the Clippers are actually really close to the Thunder in the West. The Clippers are the number 3 seed right now, but they could actually sneak up if Oklahoma City stumbles in their last 2 games and take the number 2 seed away from them, and basically flip flop their positions. Where the Thunder would be number 3 in the West, and the Clippers would be number 2 in the West for playoff seeding. There was some talk too just about the playoffs are upcoming, which teams are clinching the playoffs. They mentioned the Dallas Mavericks had clinched a playoff spot. Those were just some of the storylines going through. One of the other nice storylines that was going through there was they just talked about how Roy Hibbert actually had a quote where he said there's a bunch of selfish dudes in his locker room, and Jeff Van Gundy had some words for him to say. He just basically said that if Hibbert's going to say something like that, then he needs to name names because what that's going to do is that's just going to bring undue attention and scrutiny to the team. Basically, by him opening his mouth and saying certain things like that, he needed to keep it in house and keep it as a team matter. Um, the game, the social media coverage during this game, there was a lot of the coverage updates on Twitter. Anytime there'd be a big play, like there was an alley oop, I believe in the second quarter, to Kevin Durant, which is a huge dunk, huge play. That was posted the video onto Twitter so that people could follow that. That was the NBA Twitter feed that posted that. The ESPN Stats and Info feed posted at the beginning of the game that the Pacers were 8 wins and 13 losses in their last 21 games. So that's really showing kind of like how they've fallen away, and that's been contributed to that. During the game, there wasn't a whole lot of social media integration. The announcers didn't mention it. The only time that I really saw anything was at the halftime show when Bill Simmons and Jalen Rose were there, and their Twitter handles at Jalen Rose and at Bill Simmons were shown, and then Doug Collins, a former player and coach, was shown as having the Twitter handle at ESPN NBA. That was really the only time that I saw any kind of social media integration during the game. But some of the observations that I had were just really about, you can tell why Jalen Rose and Bill Simmons are on the halftime show. They're outspoken. They both have their own opinions. They're both really knowledgeable about basketball. So it was their personalities that shone through. During the broadcast, Jeff Van Gundy, who's a former coach, He's got a lot of great perspective because he's a former coach on what's going on in the game and things that he thinks should change. One of the other things that was really cool too was that the game was available to stream to a tablet or a phone via the NBA Game Time app, which allows you to watch pretty much any game wherever you are. So it's a great feature to have available to that. So that was pretty much what I came up with as I was watching the game. Thanks.